It's Cougar Sports Saturday.
That's caught! Touchdown! Stayed inside the boundary and gets in for 6.
Cougar Sports Saturday, a presentation of KSL Sports.
Richie right to the rim, driving score! He would not be denied!
BYU Sports Talk by Cougar fans for Cougar fans. Sponsored by Any Hour Services, electrical, plumbing, heating, and air. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Kyle Ireland. On Utah's legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM and 1160 AM.
Hour number 1 of Cougar Sports Saturday rolls on, sponsored by Any Hour Services, electric, plumbing, heating, and air. Mitch Harper, Kyle Ireland with you here on this BYU Sports Game Day. BYU basketball going to take on UConn, and BYU football will take on the TCU Horned Frogs in a late-night tilt at Lavelle Edwards Stadium. We're about to be joined by Matt Baiamonte, BYU Sports Network analyst and host, and former Cougar Sports Saturday co-host. We're going to talk about the big day here. Do we have Matt? Yes. Let's bring him on in now. Matt Baiamonte, BYU Sports Network host, play-by-play man, analyst, all trades on the BYU Sports Network. He's going to be on pregame coverage today for BYU football against TCU, which you can hear right here on KSL. Happy game day, Matt.
Happy game day. These are the days, I was thinking about this earlier. These are the days BYU fans dreamt up for, decades? You've got a meaningful conference race. You've got one of the biggest college basketball games you've played in, 20 years. I know it's not going to matter come tournament time, but, when does BYU basketball play in a top 10 matchup? And then on top of that, you got women's soccer advancing in dramatic fashion yesterday, and it's just this is the golden age of BYU sports, guys. It is so much fun.
Matt, looking at tonight's football game, let's start there. You have BYU coming off of a blowout loss on the road to the Red Raiders, 29-7. How does this BYU team rebound this week? What do they need to do in order to prevent a double loss, losing to the Raiders 2 in a row, essentially, like they did to Kansas and Arizona State last year, and really, kicking themselves out of the conference race, essentially?
The thing they have to do, and it is going to be a challenge, and this is ultimately where I think the game will be won or lost. This team, they have to run the football. They don't have to be as good as they've been when LJ was at peak health, but they cannot rush for under 100 yards like they did against Texas Tech. And that will be hard against a TCU defense that is really good at stopping the run, and they're not that great at stopping the pass. And you might look at that and say, well, of course, just throw the ball on them and march up and down the field. And if that works, great. But this team has not shown an ability to spread it all over the yard for 4 quarters. When they've been at their best, and A-Rod's talked about this a lot, when this offense is at their best, they're running the football and they're making things happen on play action. And that never happened against Texas Tech. They were never able to get into that many even third and manageables. It felt like first down, nothing. Second down, nothing. Then you're into an obvious passing down. And as A-Rod noted earlier in the week on Coordinator's Corner, they were having to max protect 7 dudes because Texas Tech's defensive line was so good. And so they weren't even able to get into a lot of 4 wide receiver sets. So to me, it comes back to you've got to find a way to run the football. If that is more Bear Bachmeier, then so be it. If he needs to tote the ball 20 times, that's not ideal, but we're at the part of the season where you have to win at any way cost. And in order to beat TCU, they're going to have to run the ball for over 100 yards. And, let's cross our fingers, guys, that LJ is healthier and that he can look more like himself. But if that's not the case, if he's only going to carry it 11 times or so and not be super effective, then I think you got to find a way to get Bear more involved in the run game, because this team is built for the run. They have a good offensive line. They have a dual threat quarterback. They've got a great run blocking tight end in Carson Ryan. They absolutely have to establish the run. And if they don't, that doesn't mean they can't win, but I have a hard time seeing them winning this week if they have a similar rushing attack as they did last week.
And TCU's got a good run defense, second in the Big 12 in stopping the run during league play, 133 yards per game allowed is the Horned Frogs. So that would be an impressive accomplishment if BYU can get that run game established once again. How do you feel about the defense, Matt? The secondary maybe in particular, because TCU, they love to air it out. We all know Josh Hoover is excellent, at least when he faces BYU. He's brilliant against the Cougars 2 years ago. How confident are you in this secondary going up against a TCU passing attack that's got some big play receivers?
I'm pretty confident because they have 12 intercepted passes on the year, and Josh Hoover and this TCU offense, they've had a problem with turnovers. And all three of their losses, they've turned it over 3 times. This BYU defense is not quite as opportunistic as last year's defense. You go back to that Texas Tech game, they had 2 plays, one of which I thought was the play of the game when Evan Johnson was waiting for an interception in the first quarter, and the receiver from, I forget his first name, last name Eason. You would know, Mitch. What's his first name?
Gosh, I'm drawing a blank as well.
Anyways, you know the play where,
Yes,
where it was third and long, and it looked like that could have been a pick six, and Evan Johnson got beat to the ball, and then they went down and scored and went up 10-0. If BYU had made a play there, it's maybe a different football game. And then Trey Alexander dropped the pick. So, but this defense, they have made enough plays, I think, to be considered one of the better defenses in the Big 12 at forcing turnovers, and TCU is prone to turning it over. So to answer your question, Mitch, I'm not too worried. I think Evan Johnson has done a nice job. The one place I worry a little bit would be that spot between Maury Bamba and Trey Alexander. They've had moments of brilliance, but not as consistent as Evan Johnson. But then behind them, I really like Tanner Wall. I think he's a ball hawk. And then you got Falatau Satuwala, who's maybe the most improved defensive player this season for BYU. He's been a stud, and Raider Demooney looked good. So I think they'll be able to handle this TCU passing offense, which is second best in the Big 12. They're really good. And Josh Hoover, his first career start was against BYU in 2023, and he threw for over 400 yards. You can't let that happen again. I do think TCU will have yards. I think they will move the football at times. But if you can force field goals and get a couple turnovers, that's the one thing last week. When you think about this defense, I thought they played pretty well against Tech. They just didn't force turnovers. If they had forced a couple turnovers, then I think we're talking about a different game. Maybe not a win, but you're going to be talking about a closer loss, and you're feeling a little bit differently. So they've got to find a way to force TCU into 2 or 3 turnovers, and TCU has shown they'll turn it over, but BYU's got to capitalize on those opportunities tonight.
Matt, this is kind of a big picture question because I look at, after the game last week, Kalani was really upset with Parker Kingston's muff punt, the shank punt by Sam Vanderhaar, and then you look at Bear Bachmeier obviously having his worst game of the season. They just haven't played really clean football for a few weeks now. Do you think that the moment is getting too big for this team where, the pressure of being 8-0 heading into the game last week, number 7 in the playoff rankings, obviously Texas Tech was a great team and, one of those teams that might be able to win it all this year, but as they head down these final 3 games into this home stretch, do you think that the pressure of, not repeating what happened last year and really getting to put their stamp on the season as a special one and being able to get to Arlington, do you think the moment is getting too big for this team?
No, I don't think the moment's too big. I like what I heard from the coordinators this week at media availability. I liked what I heard from Falatau Satuwala when he spoke to the media, when he said, hey, we have been in this position before, and we were complacent last year. This team, there's a lot of returning players from last year's team. That's something I've liked a lot about this BYU football program these last 2 years, is they have leaned in to the guys that they have. That doesn't mean you don't go into the portal and supplement. They've certainly done that. And they've had portal players on this team that have made a huge impact. But the large majority of your main players have been in the program for more than a season. And so they remember the sting of last year. So I'm not worried at all that the moment's too big. I think quite simply that Texas Tech loss is explained in two ways to me. Number one, I think that BYU against the Red Raiders, they were not opportunistic. There were plays to be made in that football game that would have made it a close game. And they did not make the majority of those plays. Let's not forget that. Chase Roberts had a chance to make a highlight reel, long pass catch that would have put them in scoring position in the first half. He didn't make the play. They didn't score. They didn't make a field goal when they could have cut it to a one-score lead. What impact does that have on that game? Just getting some points on the board and settling the nerves a little bit. There were plays all over the field to be made against the best defense, the best team in the Big 12. They did not make those plays. The only play that I thought they made in that game in a key moment was Raider DeMooney breaking up Texas Tech, trying to really put the hammer down at the end of the first half. Other than that, Tech made all the plays. So to me, if BYU can get back to what they have done all season, and we talked about it, run the football, force turnovers, be good on special teams. What we saw last week in Lubbock, that was not indicative of what the special teams unit has been like under Kelly Papiga. They have been so good. We have talked about that in a number of games, whether it being Will Farron on game-winning field goal kicks or Kingston on good punt returns. I know he's had a couple fumbles this year, but for the majority of his career, he's been an active presence in the special teams. If you just get back to being you, run the football a little bit, be solid on special teams, force a couple turnovers, you're fine. You got 2 of 3 at home. So to me, I would not panic. I don't think the pressure's there. I think you just get back to playing BYU football. And if you can do that, I think they'll win today. And then it sets up the biggest game of the year next week in Cincinnati.
Last thing for you, man. I'm glad you brought up the special teams because I know you love the special teams. And look, it's been so big for BYU these last few years. Does it kind of surprise you, like it did me this week, that BYU in Big 12 play is 15th in the league in field goal percentage, only 63%? Do you still trust Will Farron if a game is on the line? Because we know in these Big 12 games, margins are tight. Do you still trust Big Game Bill?
I still trust Big Game Bill. That is very surprising to me. And the special teams play this year has been sort of puzzling at times. Even last year, like we haven't seen a shank from Sam Vanderhaar his whole career at BYU, and then he's got 2. The thing about Will, I wonder, and you guys were there, so you would know better than a lot of fans, the wind seemed like it was a much bigger factor last week than maybe anyone realized. And when you're kicking from 50-plus yards and you got wind like that, you can hit the ball perfectly, but the wind could take it, and you don't account for it properly. So I just wonder that field goal miss last week, how much did the wind play a role in it? Hard to say, but we do know it was windy.
Yep.
And then, he had that stretch in the middle of the year where he was missing a couple. So, but he hasn't been, from my vantage point, shaky in confidence. And I don't think he's had any, horrible misses. I think he's had a couple misses that were off that you would expect him to make, but I haven't seen just a complete shank. And then you look at him after the kick and he looks distraught. I still think he's got the confidence. I still believe in him. I think he'll bounce back in a big way tonight when called upon. So I still believe in this special teams. I think there's been enough goodwill done over these past couple seasons to where it's not time to bail on them yet. I think Parker will bounce back. I think Will bounce back. Sam will bounce back. I'm not worried, but I am surprised that they, especially last week, I did not see that coming at all. But I am surprised that they have not been as good as they were last year.
He's Matt Baiamonte. You can listen to him on the BYU Sports Network. He will have pregame coverage of BYU football versus TCU that you can listen to right here on KSL News Radio. Matt, it's always a pleasure having you on Cougar Sports Saturday. Have a great broadcast today, and we'll talk, I assume, at LES tonight.
Oh, yeah, we'll talk. Love you guys. Love the show. Everything you guys do with KSL and Cougar Sports Saturday is great. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. That's Matt Baiamonte. Love you, too. So we'll get to a break here. We'll talk more BYU, TCU next, and then we'll also get some BYU basketball talk as the Cougs get set to take on the UConn Huskies right here on KSL.